You're listening to a Roddenberry Podcast.
Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back. We'll have more news this evening, but first...
The latest Gene-ology, a Roddenberry Podcast.
Episode 91, To Wear a Badge. Welcome to Mission Log Gene-ology. I'm Ashley Thomas.
And I'm Earl Green. In each and every episode of Gene-ology, we roll the dice on something from early in Gene Roddenberry's TV writing career. Maybe it's a script, maybe it's a show.
The whole time, we're betting we'll find something that looks a lot like the morals, meanings, and messages that could be found in Gene's most famous later work, Star Trek. This week, we're targeting the Corruptors and examining a story that underwent a few changes from script to screen.
Before we get to trivia on this week's episode, let me take a brief moment to encourage you to join our Patreon, or follow us on YouTube, or leave a review wherever you're listening to us. Patreon is your gateway to all things Mission Log, including exclusive access to the unedited version of our show, Target the VAM, and our private Discord, where you can interact with us, your hosts, during scheduled live chats, along with occasional screenings. You can access all this for just $1 a month. We're not going to be mad at you if you want to throw more at it. Head over to patreon.com/missionlog to see what tier works for you, and you can join the conversation.
Yeah, folks, and by the way, it's not just live chats or screenings or whatever. Sometimes you get Gene-ology After Dark Game Night, and that is a blast. So, definitely want to take a look at Patreon if you haven't done so already. Now, folks, by the way, reviews really do help our show more than you could possibly imagine. Even if you can't come up with the words for a written review, a 5-star rating really does go a long way to tell the algorithm that you like us, you love us, you want some more of us, and that other folks might like, love, and want more of us, too. We are counting on our loyal genealogists to help us spread the word. And now, target the trivia! Earl, stay on target.
Oh, I was going to say that.
Oh, sorry, bro. I didn't mean to steal your thunder, but anytime.
Happy thoughts!
Happy thoughts! Sorry, buddy.
Gene had a lot of irons in the fire writing prospective series pilots in the early 60s, but even though he was taking some very good swings at creating his second series, keep in mind he had already had one at-bat in the summer of 1960 with the obscure short-run Western series Wrangler, the networks just weren't biting. Gene was trying to park the horse and write something set in the 20th century for a change, but the networks were slow to give up on the Western. But the bills still needed to be paid, so it was back into the freelance trenches to write an episode of someone else's show here and there, which brings us to episode 10 of Target the Corruptors, a show title with a colon and an exclamation point. While this show was at its heart a crime drama, its focus was on investigative journalists rooting out crime, often at no insignificant risk to themselves. The series was created by and based on the experiences of a former newspaper reporter turned TV writer whose on-screen name was Lester Veli. In actuality, this was the pen name of a Ukrainian immigrant, Leov Vielashansky, whose family came to America at the turn of the 20th century and changed their last name. Lester went to school in Wisconsin and later worked in New York City, writing for Collier's, Reader's Digest, and numerous other publications. His award-winning investigative exposés of organized crime were some of the first work to shine a light on Jimmy Hoffa. His real-life experiences informed the series, though Lester himself never single-handedly wrote any one-episode script, but since the show was so closely based on his exploits, he was credited as its creator. Lester later moved to Norman, Oklahoma, where he died in 2003, just short of his 97th birthday. Target the Corruptors later went into syndication under the title Exposé, and it has been repeated from time to time on cable channels specializing in vintage programming. Episodes pop up on YouTube occasionally, as do bootlegs on physical media, but the series has never gotten an official home media or streaming release. This particular episode was the 10th to air on December 1st, 1961 on ABC. We also have an unnumbered revised draft script from Gene's files dated August 3rd, 1961. For context, this episode aired 10 days after Gene's second Shannon episode, The Pickup, and 3 months before Paladin resumes his acquaintance with Alice on Have Gun Will Travel. But somewhere along the way, the show's story supervisor, Harry Essex, stepped in and performed significant rewrites to the script. So this episode, To Wear a Badge, gives story credit only to Gene, but gives Harry Essex teleplay credit. It's interesting to note that we've run into this only a handful of times. There have been a few co-writes and collaborations, but rewrites like this that sideline Gene to a story credit are very rare. The series stars Stephen McNally as Paul Marino. Stephen had gone to school to pursue a career practicing law, but while he was still in his 20s, in the early stages of that career, the acting bug bit Stephen, and it bit hard. He gave up being an attorney for being an actor, and quickly found he was in demand on the big screen, though frequently cast as second-string bad guys. He stepped up to starring roles in the late 40s and early 50s in such films as No Way Out, The Duel at Silver Creek, and The Lady Pays Off. In the late 50s, Stephen gradually increased his showing on the small screen, and by the time he starred in all 35 episodes of Target the Corruptors, he was now a TV actor who only occasionally landed movie roles. He continued to stay busy as a familiar guest star until he retired in 1980. We lost Stephen McNally in 1994. As Paul Marino's right-hand man, Jack Flood, we have actor Robert Harland. Target the Corruptors was a lucky break, landing just 3 years into Robert's acting career on TV. But it was a lucky break that did not repeat itself. Robert stayed busy as an occasional guest star on other shows after the single-season run of Target the Corruptors, but in the 1970s he decided he was also going to try his hand at writing for TV, eventually returning to acting in the 80s. Robert died in 2023. Our guest stars this week are more Roberts, but they're fairly heavy hitters in the Bob Squad. Robert Vaughn, we've seen before, way back in Gene's first script for West Point, The Operator and the Martinet. We'll see him again as a regular on The Lieutenant. Of course, it was during the run of The Lieutenant that Robert was approached about playing a super spy in the James Bond mold in a show originally pitched under his character's name, Solo. By the time it hit the air, that show was known as The Man from U.N.C.L.E., and the rest, as they say, is history. Also guest starring this week is Robert Culp as Meeker. Maybe you know him from I Spy. Maybe you remember him from The Greatest American Hero. But Robert Culp became a fixture on American TV just a few years after this guest role. This isn't the last time Robert would work on a Gene Roddenberry project. He later starred in Gene's 1977 pilot movie, Spectre, as the hero of the piece, supernatural investigator William Sebastian. But that's yet to come. Other notable guest stars in more minor roles include Jacqueline Scott, who would later appear in Gene's 1963 Have Gun Will Travel episode, Cage at McNabb, as Nora Larson, and veteran character actor Royal Dano, who will appear in a later show on which Gene receives a story credit only, an episode of the 70s Western Alias Smith and Jones. There's also a very early career appearance by Michael Constantine as the police chief here. He, of course, went on to appear in the My Big Fat Greek Wedding movies and countless other things, including my personal all-time favorite episode of Friday the 13th, the series. And we'll see him again next week in an episode of Dr. Kildare, also written by Gene.
Care for a drink?
No thanks.
I understand your department plans to clean up Verdun?
You've got the right information.
Tell me what I can do to help.
What's that?
I was sent out by the hotel chain that owns the Blue Knight here. Frankly, we're a little ashamed of what's happened to this place. We want to change things.
I'm listening.
But a bit suspiciously. You can check us out easily. You won't find as much as a parking ticket against either myself or the corporation. I've just thrown the ball to you, Captain. What would you change if you were me?
If your business is hotels, Mr. Lace, then why not run a hotel? Take out the gambling.
That's a tall order.
A good way to find out if a man is just making talk.
Percy, I want every table and machine taken out by noon tomorrow. We'll convert the main casino to dining and dancing.
Yes, sir.
I guess you know some of my employees won't want to go along with this. They'll try to keep games going on upstairs rooms. Suppose I hire you in your spare time to see I get what we've agreed on.
That's very flattering, Mr. Lace, but I'm afraid I couldn't arrange it.
Without even hearing the salary?
There's something we learn early in this profession, Mr. Lace. When a man hands you something and you take it, that leaves an empty hand out there, waiting.
Investigative journalist Paul Marino and his young assistant Jack Flood track down and expose crime and corruption. There's just one problem. The corrupt and the criminals tend to dislike being exposed, and that's when Paul and Jack's jobs become dangerous. We open with a pan across a nighttime cityscape as Paul Marino gives us the lay of the land. A loophole in state laws allow casinos and gambling dens to operate legally in a small city just adjacent to a much larger one. Each city has its own leadership and its own police force. Marino's readers have asked him to investigate what the smaller city's poker palaces are doing to the moral fabric of its larger neighbor. Inside one of the gambling establishments, a woman holds her poker cards in one hand and rocks the pram holding her cooing baby with the other. Never mind a baby in a bar, we got a baby in a casino here. A waitress stops to give the baby some attention because the baby's mother only has eyes for her poker hand. Elsewhere in the room, a somewhat mousy man in a suit and tie approaches another man, Nichols, who is surveying the room, with a simple two-word message: he's here. That's their cue to make their way to a room in the back where another gathering of guys in suits is taking place. Nichols spies a familiar face, Jerry Lace. He's obviously the man in charge. Nichols grins nervously. I take it we're here to be spanked. Does teacher want to tell us what we've done wrong? Lace smiles a cold smile. Be sure to make that joke when Mr. Jesse gets here. He's got a marvelous sense of humor. The nervous grin on Nichols' face fades. So does the smile on Jerry Lace's face. It just got real, and it's not good. Act 1. Hey, the boss is here. Mr. Jesse arrives using forearm crutches to reach the front of the room to stand near Jerry Lace and tells everyone assembled to be seated. Nichols is the last to sit, and thus the first to be noticed. Everyone in the room has more than doubled their money, but Mr. Jesse's concerned about the death of a newspaper reporter. The quite accidental death, of course, which Nichols arranged because the reporter had found something out and was going to write a story about it. Mr. Jesse would have appreciated being consulted before such action was taken. But, Jerry Lace interrupts, now we've got worse problems. A push for police reform. Despite Nichols saying he still has a man on the inside, Lace keeps explaining it for Mr. Jesse's benefit. A shake-up at the police department has brought in a new chief of police who doesn't owe Nichols any favors. Mr. Jesse is not pleased. Come sit up here with us, Nichols. Bring your chair. Mr. Jesse talks about how the laws surrounding gambling here are supported by 4 legs, like Nichols' chair. Those legs are the politicians, the businessmen, the people, and the police. You comfortable sitting there, Mr. Nichols? Nichols smirks. Sure, he's comfortable. With a swing of one of his crutches, Mr. Jesse breaks a leg of the chair, sending Nichols crashing to the ground. All that had to happen to bring the whole thing down was taking out one leg, the police, and the other 3 legs weren't sufficient for the chair to remain intact. Oh, sorry about that, Mr. Nichols. Mr. Jesse takes a cloth off of a much larger chair. This is Jerry Lace's chair, and he'll be leaving Mr. Lace here to keep a closer eye on his operation. Jerry likes his chair. It's a nice chair, but it's his chair. As Mr. Jesse makes to leave, Lace announces that another reporter is due to visit tomorrow afternoon, Paul Marino. Mr. Jesse says he's tired, and he's leaving it up to Lace to figure out how to deal with the reporter. He strongly suggests everyone listens to Lace's advice. Interlude. A discussion between an off-duty police officer named Meeker and his wife. They have 2 children. one healthy son, and a baby born with brain damage who requires constant care at a specialized facility. It's expensive, but the alternative is sending him to a state institution. They've also inherited the cabinet-making business Meeker's dad started. Meeker is doing police work and running the cabinet company at the same time. It's still not enough. Nothing he says puts his wife's mind at ease. At the airport, Paul Marino ventures out of the terminal, and he's expected. A cabbie knows his name and offers a ride, which Paul accepts after thinking it over for a moment. The cab driver is talkative on the drive into town, surprised that there wasn't more of a welcoming committee waiting for a reporter of his standing. Paul holds his tongue and lets the cabbie keep talking. And here comes the pro-casino, anti-reform talking points. When he's done with his rehearsed spiel, the driver says, "Makes sense, doesn't it, Mr. Marino?" Paul calmly says, "But suppose it doesn't make sense." And then it gets weird. The driver says, "Come on, smart guy like you, getting in a car the way you did, you could have gotten yourself kidnapped. Maybe never wind up where you're going. By the way, where are you going?" Paul says he's headed for the police station. Translation, they're expecting me and they'll be suspicious if I don't show up. And with that, this magnificently awkward conversation ends. At the police station, safe and sound, Paul meets the new chief of police, a man named Swenson. He and Officer Meeker fill Paul in on his predecessor, the reporter who died in a suspicious accident. Only Swenson knows it was not an accident. That's how brazen Nichols' operation has become. Paul listens as Swenson and Meeker talk about their desire to get rid of the gambling operations by cracking down on every violation mercilessly. And Paul reporting on those efforts would be a PR coup for the police department. Everyone, whether they are for gambling or against it, seems to be trying to get their licks in early and steer Paul's story for him. That's when another police officer shows up, Harry Bell. He's a 5-year veteran of the department, so he saw how things worked before Chief Swenson arrived. Bell has a message for Meeker to pay a visit to a Mr. Jerome Lace as soon as it's convenient. Awkward, but the chief says this social call might produce some useful information. Meeker visits Lace at the casino, where Lace launches into a spiel about how his employers, who run hotels, have put him in charge here to clean things up. So, the police don't have to worry about it. Meeker is suspicious. If the business is hotels, why isn't Lace running a hotel with no casino in it? Because that would remove a lot of the problem right there. Any other solution is just talk. With that, Lace summons another employee of the casino to inform him that all of the games of chance are to be removed immediately. The first-floor casino will be converted into a space for dining and dancing. Now that that's out of the way, Lace says he does have concerns that some of his employees may try to run private games elsewhere in the hotel, but that's where Meeker comes in. Lace wants to hire him to do security in his off-duty hours. After all, cops are notoriously underpaid. Especially cops with kids. Meeker smiles but turns Lace down before letting himself out. Jerry Lace is confident, however, that he will own Meeker in less than a month. Act 2. The Meeker Cabinet Company lands a big contract, big enough that it's practically an answer to their prayers. Meeker and Mrs. Meeker will need to put their heads together on how to take on the job. It may require taking out a second loan on their house. Later, Paul Marino walks into a business filled with pinball machines, and that's where his assistant, Jack, is waiting to meet him. Jack's done a little bit of snooping of his own into the police department. Every officer there has a colorful past that doesn't necessarily make each one of them suspicious. But Jack hasn't been able to find out much about Meeker. Also, we find out that Paul sure does not play a mean pinball. Nichols visits Jerry Lace, complaining about the relentless reform effort cutting into the bottom line. And now that Lace has had the gambling machines removed, they'll keep demanding more reforms. Nichols thinks Lace should think and strategize less and fight back more. And then he storms out. Lace ponders the possibility that Nichols might be right. Elsewhere in town, a new sign is being hung. The Meeker Cabinet Company is moving into a larger space to take on more business. But Meeker himself can't stay. He tells his wife he's got police business to attend to, which she protests, pointing out that this was supposed to be his day off, but off he goes. At the public library, Paul Marino is poring over the back issues of the local paper, doing research, when in walks Chief Swenson, making comments about how he thought a reporter would be out in the field instead of reading old papers. But Paul has found some interesting stories in the back issues, stories which may cast some suspicion on Officer Bell. The chief scoffs. He would trust Bell with his life, and has done so on many occasions. Whatever Bell may have done before Swenson was the chief is not his concern. And with that, the chief leaves. Walking outside the library, the chief is busted for jaywalking by Bell. They have a laugh with hints of serious conversation. Swenson starts in on explaining why he promoted Meeker over Bell, but Bell says he doesn't hold it against him. That night at the hotel, there sure is a lot of gambling happening in the dining and dancing area. Jack is there, snapping photos with a tiny camera that's disguised as a lighter. After taking his pictures, he goes out to his car and is surprised to find someone in the back seat. It's just Paul, though, with some intel on an upcoming police raid that Meeker will be heading up, trying to bust up backroom gambling that isn't happening out in the open. Paul needs Jack to be his eyes and ears there. Get in on a game, though that means Jack may end the evening in a jail cell. The raid goes down right on schedule, breaking up a game of craps with serious money attached. Everyone gets hauled in and thrown into the tank, including Jack, and including Nichols. Jack gives Nichols grief, but perks up when Nichols is let out of the cell. Nichols is escorted around the corner for a meeting with none other than Bell. When Nichols complains that their mutual friends are awfully slow in bailing him out, Bell answers with a punch to the gut. Nichols has no friends right now. Bell definitely isn't his friend. And with that, Nichols is taken back to the cell, and Bell goes back into the station house, passing a room where Meeker is taking a private call from his wife. The deal has fallen through. Their customer is refusing to pay up, saying the cabinets weren't up to spec. None of it makes any sense. Meeker's wife wants him to leave the police station and come and help her deal with it, but he can't. He tells her to get more information about the customer's complaint and hangs up, and then finds that Paul Marino is standing behind him. Paul heard enough of Meeker's side of the phone call to work out that something has gone wrong. That's when he lets Meeker know that one of the officers in the company that placed the cabinet order is none other than Jerome Lace. Having delivered this plot point to Meeker, Paul leaves him to stew in it. Act 3. In jail, Jack is told he's being bailed out. Oh, so that's what Paul was doing here. As Jack fills out some paperwork, Nichols asks him to deliver a written message to a specific box at the post office. He even says Jack can come see him tomorrow, and Nichols will pay back every dime Jack lost on craps. Once Paul springs him, he and Jack try to decipher Nichols' cryptic handwritten message, 24-M. Jack's hunch is that it's an ultimatum. If not bailed out of jail in 24 hours, Nichols will start talking to Paul Marino, the Big M. Rather than taking the time to monitor the mailbox, Paul tells Jack to hand-deliver the message to Jerry Lace, claiming that Nichols told him to. But Lace already has a visitor calling on him. Meeker is there to ask about the cabinet contract. Lace plays a little bit dumb, but wonders, won't canceling the contract leave the Meekers deep in debt? Well, that's got to be rough, especially when one of Meeker's kids has special needs. Wow, but Jerry Lace is remarkably well informed. But he'd sure like to help. If Meeker will kindly not cancel that cabinet contract, he'll at least have some money coming in. Meeker acquiesces, and just like that, as predicted, Jerry Lace owns him. Mr. Jesse's office. A record player fills the room with the Blue Danube Waltz as Mr. Jesse, on his crutches, ruminates about how he was once quite a dancer. Jerry Lace serves him dinner, but it's still a working dinner. Jesse wants an operation to oust Chief Swenson and replace him with Meeker as the chief of police, but he's going to leave the details up to Jerry Lace. Just then there's a knock at the door, a young man with a handwritten note he was to deliver personally to Lace. Jack introduces himself under another name, explaining that he was at the craps game that the cops raided. Lace gives Jack a tip and sends him on his way, handing Nichols' note to Mr. Jesse. The boss is not amused. This is an ultimatum. Time to take care of 2 birds with 1 stone. Paul and Jack confer with Chief Swenson in private. Paul bets that Nichols' ultimatum has just made him a target to be silenced permanently. Which means that the chief needs to stop kidding himself about whether or not there's corruption in his own police department. He doesn't take this news lightly, but he does place a call to Bell, get Nichols ready to be transferred to another facility. The chief will transport him himself. Bell relays this news to Jerry Lace, who is delighted. Both of the people he wants out of the way in a single moving vehicle? This worked out better than he thought. The chief is driving Nichols to another jail, and Nichols thinks it's just an old police shell game that keeps him in perpetual motion so he can never bail out. But they both notice that the driver behind them is closing in fast. Well, that's not good. With Nichols shouting in his ear that he recognizes the car, Chief Swenson tries to avoid letting the other driver force him off the road. But eventually the chief's car goes off the road and into a ravine where it explodes on impact. 2 birds, 1 stone, all done. Act 4. The next day, in the office of the chief of police, the newly sworn-in chief, Meeker, is going through Swenson's personal effects. Paul Marino drops by for a chat that Meeker is in no mood to have, but Paul lays it on the line anyway. This department is rotten with corruption, and if Meeker really wants to clean up the town like he was talking about earlier, he should start by looking very closely at Bell. Unless, Paul adds, there's some reason you don't want to find out? Meeker puts out the call to bring Bell in for questioning. Meeker almost immediately gets a phone call from Jerry Lace. Don't cause any trouble for Bell. Meeker wants to know where Lace gets off giving him orders, so Lace tells him, let's meet at your cabinet factory in 1 hour, and I'll explain it to you. Paul Marino gets an unexpected visitor, Bell. Bell is angry that Paul got him questioned and claims there's no reason for questioning him. Paul is very direct at this point. You are responsible for the death of Chief Swenson. Bell is even angrier now. The chief was his friend. Paul says Bell's just trying to delude himself into thinking he had nothing to do with it, but he could make it up to the chief and honor his memory by rolling over on the Jerry Lace operation now. Bell asks for 30 minutes to do that. Paul worries that he's asking for 30 minutes to get a head start running out of town. At the cabinet factory, Meeker tries to send his wife home early over her protests, but she finally leaves just as Jerry Lace arrives. He's here to remind Meeker of the extent to which he is owned by the mob now. With just a couple of phone calls, Lace could end Meeker's police career and bankrupt his family. Or Meeker could play ball. Meeker mumbles, "You don't leave any way open for me, do you?" Self-satisfied, Lace smirks, "Just my way." But Meeker has another option in mind and pulls his service revolver. Just then, Bell shows up, telling Meeker that Lace is behind the death of the chief. Lace uses the momentary distraction to pull his own gun, shooting Bell. Meeker returns fire and shoots Lace in the gut. Epilogue. Paul Marino is working on the big story, a shootout in a nondescript cabinet factory that laid bare the corruption in the police department and a major organized crime operation that had all but taken over the city. Jack walks in fresh from the courtroom. Mr. Jesse now faces charges of conspiracy and being an accessory in the murders of both Chief Swenson and Officer Bell. Meeker has been suspended pending the rest of that investigation. Paul figures he'll have to stay in town to be a character witness for Meeker. There's a much better chance of the town getting cleaned up, but at one hell of a price tag in lives either ended or ruined. Was it worth it? Let's go get a drink. The end.
I believe you have targeted that recap. No corruption in sight. Well done.
Well, yeah, as you said earlier, I tried to stay on target.
Stay on target.
But there's a lot going on here. This is an hour show. If I am not mistaken, we have left the half-hour shows behind.
They seem to be in the rearview mirror of the van.
Yes. There's a lot more plot. There's a lot more going on. And that means there's a lot more weird stuff to notice.
Mm-hmm.
And let's start with that opening shot once we are done with the cityscape.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we start out on the gambling lady and the baby stroller, which, yes, we are once again referring back to Sweet Home Alabama. You brought a baby to a bar, except she brought a baby to a casino, and she's just like, yeah, whatever.
Whatever.
And then into the frame walks a waitress wearing fishnets, and boy, does the camera linger on her for what seems like a long time.
Well, and the line right before that lingering camera shot of her booty is like, these gambling establishments bring corruption, and then bend over, lady. Whoa.
Yeah, we're at the point that this aired, we're a few years before the censorship battles. I mean, entire wars fought over Barbara Eden's navel.
Yeah.
On I Dream of Jeannie.
Mm-hmm.
In that context, this seems like a really risque eyeful for 1961.
That's what I was thinking. I was just about to go look that up because I was blanking on when this aired. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, it aired in, right at the end of 1961. Okay, so by 2026 standards, this is tame.
Oh, for sure.
But compared to other stuff from this period of American TV, wow.
Downright shocking.
Yes, scandalous.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure the male audience did not change channels after that.
Oh, no, probably not. Like, oh, we're going to watch this tonight.
Yeah, I mean, we only stay with her for, I think I counted it before she is out of the frame, about 10 seconds.
Yeah, it was uncomfortably long.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The director knew exactly what he was doing there, and it was a he.
Mm-hmm. It helps to know, because we were discussing this, that, Gene's got a story credit on this, but there were a lot of heavy edits, because there's definitely a lot of dialogue in this particular episode where I'm like, ooh, well, that's a bit misogynist, isn't it? Be a good lady CEO. And I'm like, what does that mean? Shouldn't you just be a good CEO regardless of your gender?
Yeah, and by the way, again, 1961, we don't mean this in a girl boss kind of way.
No, it's basically like, you do what I tell you to.
This is a line from Meeker to his wife, by the way, about the cabinet factory.
Right. And then, like, towards the end of the episode, when she's leaving the cabinet factory, he says something to her along the lines of, do you love me whether I'm right or wrong, or something like that? Like, or would you stand by me if I'm right or wrong? Or basically, like, are you just going to do what I say even if I'm wrong? And, based on what we saw with, was it Mr. District Attorney Patrol Boat?
Yeah, I was thinking of that same episode. I was thinking back to Baby Angie Dickinson.
Like, what if we took that character that Angie Dickinson played and wrote her opposite?
Yeah, or would have been much more interesting if they'd made Mrs. Meeker more like that character.
Right. Like, this lady is she's just here to do what she's told. She doesn't have any agency. She doesn't ever object, even when her husband is clearly in the wrong. You see how he made the decisions that he's made? Because he's under pressure, and he took a contract from somebody he didn't realize was a corrupt person. But now, he's screwed every which way he can possibly be screwed. And by the way, we know about your kid that's sick. So, ooh.
Yeah, it's disturbing how well-informed Jerry Lace is, but you also kind of get the impression that whether this is the big town or the small town that they're talking about, neither one of them is a terribly big town.
No, this is definitely like a big fish in a small pond kind of guy. But even so, he knows all the little details about everything. I mean, this is a very well-informed mob guy.
Well, he's a very good villain. I mean, he almost outclasses all of his opposition in this show, including our nominal heroes.
Mm-hmm.
And, one thing I thought of is that really, just the smirk and the swagger that Robert Vaughn plays this bad guy with, it is not a million miles away from Napoleon Solo.
Mm-hmm.
Only we know this guy is not acting in anyone's best interest, and so that swagger is much more dangerous here.
Yeah. Like, I felt like he was particularly threatening.
Yeah.
Like, he played that really well. And it's surprising to me sometimes, Earl, when we're watching these older shows and, you know, the style of acting or whatever, it does not often come across as really menacing because it's so different from how we see, like, television and film now, or at least for the past 30, 40 years. And I felt like this guy is a total scumbag, and he, like, is gonna mess anyone up who gets in his way. So I like the fact that menacing, like, threatening persona came through still really well. I mean, mark of good acting for sure.
Yeah,
really, really well done.
Yeah, and let's put a pin in that because there was something cut out from the script that might have stolen some of his thunder.
Okay. All right.
We'll get back to that.
Yeah.
Someone else I really liked in this, of course, as I admitted earlier, I'm predisposed to like Michael Constantine in this. He's just one of these reliable, friendly faces we have all seen in so many things.
Mm-hmm.
He is in his mid-30s here, and yet he still looks like he emerged from the womb as a fully formed 40-year-old.
Yeah.
That's a good trick.
Hey, how about that?
It's just something about his hairline and how he carries himself. It just makes it easy to say, okay, this guy is older than the actor. The character is older than the actor.
Mm-hmm.
He certainly kind of has that world-weary quality about him.
Sure, yeah.
There's a scene where Mr. Jesse, played by Royal Dano, is kind of dancing on crutches. A little bit weird.
I thought that was a little unusual. Also, I was just excited to see Royal Dano. Talk about, like, character actors we've seen in everything.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, he's kind of dancing. He's monologuing at Robert Vaughn.
Mm-hmm.
But then I got super distracted by the most wonderful little detail because at their dinner table is one of those square, white, oven-safe casserole dishes with the glass lid and the blue flowers on the side. I mean, have these things been around since prehistoric times?
I mean, apparently, because my mama has one.
Yes,
like,
you know the one.
Yeah, bro. And that is classic Pyrex. I have a friend that collects it.
It is. It's Corningware.
Oh, Corningware. Excuse me. Not Pyrex.
Mid-century Corningware. Yeah. It's in black and white, but I instantly recognize that floral pattern.
Hey, nope. I'm pretty sure that my mom may still have some of it. I know my aunties definitely had some, if they don't still have it.
My mom had a set. My grandmother had a set. For all I know, they shared pieces of the same large set.
Yeah.
I think a set of this Corningware was issued to every household in America in the 60s.
It must have been.
It's like you didn't get a tax refund that year. You just got Corningware.
Right.
Yeah, I wonder if this was like the luckiest day ever for the prop master for Target the Corruptors, because I don't have to spend money on something. Honey, I'm going to borrow your Corningware for the shoe. I promise I'll bring it back.
Mm-hmm.
Or, if he was really smart, he brings in an invoice for, Mrs. Smith's kitchenware rentals loaned us these props.
Right.
Honey, here's 20. Just don't ask.
Yeah.
Shh. I'm sorry, just seeing this little bit of vintage Americana that is a Corningware casserole dish made me happy for some silly reason.
Listen, I was geeking out over that record player in there. I'm like, that is such a cool looking, like, stereo setup. I love looking at vintage sound equipment like that. I just think it's fun. Yeah. That was really, really cool.
Yeah. Cooking tunes, cookware. Mr. Jesse's got it going on. Kind of a pity that all of this is residing in the home of, an absolute piece of work.
It's funny. I can't hear the Blue Danube without thinking of a particular Looney Tune that is set to the Blue Danube. And so the whole time it's an older Daffy Duck cartoon. So the whole time I'm watching this, I'm imagining Daffy Duck scooting around the lake. Da 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 da. Whack 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 whack.
I know the one. Of course, I'm thinking of the Pan Am space liner approaching the space station. It's royalty-free, but it has deep cultural resonance, except for possibly the original intent of it, which has been lost to time after all of these needle drops.
Mm-hmm. Gotta say, that crazy explosion was nuts.
What is this, a Ford Pinto?
I mean, kablooey. That is where all the effects budget went, was blowing up that car.
And the sad thing is, it looked like they were almost out of the woods there.
Right. I was like, oh man, they're gonna get it. They're gonna get away. No.
It's like if a car goes off the road and goes sailing into some ravine, it will explode. It's gonna blow up real good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Ashley, despite the Corningware and the Blue Danube and the cool mid-century modern stereo setup, I am betting, but not betting a whole lot, but I am betting that we found other things of more weighty importance to talk about here.
Oh, Earl, I'm curious because you mentioned that there were a lot of changes from script to screen. So I'd be curious to hear what those might have been and how that's going to affect how we interpret this film.
Okay. There's a lot. I will warn you about that. So I will try to take this in small, manageable dribs and drabs going forward through the story. Mm-hmm. So we can stop and discuss as things come to mind. The differences between Gene's original script and the Harry Essex rewrite start happening really early.
Okay.
In the script, the mother is holding her baby at the card table, and there's no stroller, and Gene gives Marino this much more flowery explanation of the situation. A tiny city lodged in the flesh of a larger one, slowly draining away strength, vitality, and self-respect from a whole metropolitan area. The rewrite is a bit more on the nose and less purple prose, and it's talking about how property valuation is affected by the gambling dens. Please, will no one think of the landowners? Gene's wording is more concerned with the human costs and not what the parcels of land are worth. It's really interesting what changes between Gene handing in the script and the casting director doing their thing. In Gene's script, Mr. Jesse is described as a huge, ponderous man, at least 60. He moves slowly and painfully, supported by a stout cane. The script then goes on to describe him as almost like mine chieftain John L. Lewis in his declining years. That's a very specific reference.
Yeah.
John Llewellyn Lewis was a major figure in American organized labor, and he was the first president of the Congress of Industrial Organizations. And by the way, that is the CIO in AFL-CIO. Now, at the same time that he did this, Lewis was in the middle of a 40-year stint as the president of the United Mine Workers of America. Now, he did a lot of good in that role. Numerous feats of collective bargaining, pushing for the first Federal Mine Safety Act in the 1950s. But at the same time, Lewis made sure his relatives always had a paying job waiting for them within the union apparatus, and stuff like that got him widely mocked in the press. Now, despite this, LBJ awarded John L. Lewis the Presidential Medal of Freedom for his contributions to organized industrial labor and free trade unions. It's a fascinating and controversial figure in American history, and real interesting study in good accomplishments and less than good accomplishments. Gene name-checking John L. Lewis carries some really specific character connotations, none of which fit Royal Dano, who could not be further physically from the very well-fed archetype Gene had in mind. He's not huge, he seems frail.
Yeah.
So it makes one wonder if that very specific description disappeared between rewrites, or is it something that happened when the casting director did their thing?
It's a really good question. You also have to wonder, is there some measure of, if this character is meant to evoke John L. Lewis, is there some measure of, oh, that's too political?
That is entirely possible.
So much TV today gets accused of being political, whether it actually is or isn't. So,
right.
I'm curious if there was some measure of that in play.
Now, there is a significant piece of dialogue dropped from the scene where Mr. Jesse leaves Lace in charge. Okay, remember that pin I asked you to put in it earlier? Okay. In Gene's script, Mr. Jesse says, "I bring you here to do a job because I think of you as my own son. Don't give an old man the pain of finding another son."
Damn.
Those two sentences make Mr. Jesse sound a lot more dangerous. Like, even Jerry Lace is not indispensable.
Jeez Louise.
The televised version just leaves off the Mr. Jesse telling Lace it's time to find out if his faith in Lace is justified. Which kind of defangs the scene a bit. But I suppose it serves the purpose of making Jerry Lace, Robert Vaughn's character, look a lot more dangerous. Because that line, leaving that in, would have made it very clear Lace is not at the top of the food chain by a long shot. This leaves him at the top of the food chain. Especially coupled with Royal Dano's portrayal of Mr. Jesse as this kind of frail man. But then the script and the episode that we saw diverge significantly. In a lot of ways, they part ways and they never meet again. Instead of Meeker getting drawn into Lace's schemes, we have a cop named Canterbury, who is a family man in need of money, but that version of the character is already working for the mob. It makes me think this was supposed to be Bell instead. He is in it up to his eyeballs. He's dirty when we meet him. There's no subtlety about it. But then later, the meeting with Lace plays out like it did on screen, so you're kind of going, wait, what? Which is kind of why I think maybe it was supposed to be Bell. Because Meeker is not already part of the mob, it's this kind of dangerous seduction of sorts with Jerry Lace. We, the audience, know what Meeker's weakness is, and so we know where this will go. And, we know when Jerry Lace starts saying, oh, it's a shame about your kid, we're like, yeah, okay, fix is in. But at least in that version of the story, we get the descent and the fall from grace. The script seems to forget that Canterbury is dirty, unless, of course, Canterbury in that scene was supposed to be Belle, and Gene just... One too many parts of the script written late at night. I don't know. The script's emphasis is more on the police work. It kind of reminded me of that Dr. Christian episode.
Yeah.
We tuned in for a doctor show and a cop show broke out.
Right.
The script that Gene wrote shows a lot more of Lace subverting the whole city to his whims, including the local newspaper editor. And Chief Swenson's fatal car wreck happens after a dinner party where Lace drugs the chief's drink. It's wild. Lace is this all-powerful, I will end you type in the script, actually gets pulled back a bit on screen. And really, the script just seems un-Gene-like. If you told me there were going to be 2 writers credited on this, and I read the script in the blind, and I watched the show in the blind without paying attention to bylines or credits, I would have sworn that Gene did the rewrite, because it just seems more like the rewrite that was not by Gene made it sound more like what we know of Gene's work.
Right.
The original script is just ridiculously violent in places, and really doesn't offer a path for redemption for many of the characters. Another thing about the script is that Jack, Paul Marino's sidekick, is completely absent.
Okay.
So I wonder if Jack was added to the series format and the writer's guide late in the proceedings after Gene wrote his script, which that in itself would have necessitated some rewrites. The rewrites focus on character dilemmas, and Gene's script, at least the draft that we have access to, just piles on an improbable amount of plot and incident and does not focus on characters. Like, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then holy crap, this happens. But we don't really get into anyone's head about it. And so I'm going to say something I don't think I've said too often on this show. I understand why Gene Roddenberry got rewritten. So that, in a nutshell, those are the major changes between script and show. Does that almost answer any of your questions?
Yeah, no, it does. It does. That does make sense. I see how we got here. I'm curious, Earl. Did the dialogue for Mrs. Meeker, was any of that any better? Was her characterization any better at all?
Not really. She is sidelined just as quickly on paper as she is in the show. It's 1961 TV writing, written by men, and so, this is work for men. It doesn't have to be, and that's another thing that seems surprisingly unlike Gene, very atypical of his work.
Well, especially considering in his earlier stuff with Mr. District Attorney, Angie Dickinson is wrecking the curve for every other woman that comes after her. Let's be clear. So
I'm going to say something terrifying. I hope you're ready for this.
I'm ready, bro.
Wavelin had more agency than Mrs. Meeker.
Okay, I don't know that I was ready for that, Earl.
No, think about it. She ran away from home to get away from her arranged marriage.
Okay.
She was more proactive in that episode of Wrangler than Mrs. Meeker is here. Mrs. Meeker here is just like, please stop being a cop and come take care of this stuff.
Yeah.
And then go home, honey. That's her part in this story.
Yeah. Okay. Nope. Fair. That is a fair point, Earl. No, you're right.
And boy, that's not a criticism I want to be able to make, but here we are.
Things I didn't think I'd be doing today.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious. When you messaged me to say, this one takes some real wild left turns, it goes off the rails. I don't know what I was... It literally goes through the guardrails and explodes. I wasn't quite sure what to expect. I don't know that it was this.
Yeah. I want to find more episodes of this show to see how typical this is of Target the Corruptors. It's a lot like Jefferson Drum. It's like, oh, that's a really cool idea for a show, focusing it on reporters instead of cops. Of course, the cops will get involved because the reporter's going to get in over their heads and, they're not packing heat. I would need to know more about the show to be able to tell whether this is typical or atypical.
Yeah.
Because whether it is inherited from Gene's original script draft or whether it is something that Harry Essex added in the rewrites, it just doesn't feel like something that belongs in Gene Roddenberry's body of work.
I do think some of the storyline is interesting. I think it's a really interesting idea to have these cop stories or like detective stories kind of told through the lens of a writer versus a law enforcement officer.
Yeah, but this ain't Lou Grant.
And it's not Kolchak the Night Stalker.
It is neither of the above.
Yeah, so I think that kind of perspective could be an interesting way to tell the story. But what we're getting here is just, it's so much run-of-the-mill cop story. It's almost like the writer might as well be a cop.
If the premise of the show is, this is the exposure of crime and criminals by the press, this episode absolutely falls down on that count, and I'll get into that in the wrap-up.
Yeah.
Okay, Ashley, this crime ring has been busted wide open. But what have we learned today?
Oh, what have we learned? I don't know.
Don't drive off the road in that kind of car.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't be a crooked cop that also moonlights as a cabinet maker, because the mob will contract you to make some cabinets for their casino, and they're going to say they suck and refuse to accept them, and then you're out money for all these cabinets. And then, oh yeah, you're also going to be our leak in the police office, and yeah, we're just going to screw you 6 ways till Sunday, is what I have learned from this episode. So don't mess with the mob, and don't moonlight as a cabinet maker.
Or don't mess with the mob. Remember to install the knob. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Okay.
Oh, dear. And I guess we have instructions on how to be a good lady CEO?
Not really.
No. I don't even know what that means.
Ashley, you're thinking of Joan Crawford again. And so am I, because that was a better script.
Joan Crawford or Joan Rivers? Who knows?
Either one.
Either one.
I am here for either version.
Either one. Goodness gracious.
Okay, so, look, I think we've already arrived at the point where we realize not everything Gene Roddenberry writes is going to be a grand statement. Not everything is going to be the gold we're looking for. However, we have set ourselves to the task of looking at all of his past work. And so, yeah, we're going to hit the speed bumps like this one, too. Gene turned in a kind of top-heavy script that goes off the rails. Really, it goes off the road and it explodes, like we said earlier.
I was about to say, we hit that speed bump real good and went off the road. Kaboom!
Yeah, but somehow, the makers of Target the Corruptors were still able to craft something that kind of fit their show.
Yeah.
Now, the original script is a letdown to read. Upon learning that this show was about an intrepid newspaper reporter, I was kind of hoping, oh good, this is another chance to do Jefferson Drum right. But no. The revised script that was ultimately shot is still this very twisty-turny thing. We are now in the early heyday of the hour-long drama, and for a whole industry that had attuned its entire workflow to cramming entire self-contained dramatic stories into a half-hour time slot, there's bound to be a learning curve for everybody, and that includes Gene. Gene's answer to having an additional half hour to tell the story was, okay, I'm going to invent a series of almost unlikely interlocking events just to prove that Jerry Lace owns the whole town. The rewrite takes out some of the stranger twists and focuses more on the characters in the police department. That's good. That's good. This is the only episode of Target the Corruptors I have seen. And my biggest surprise here, and I was leading up to this earlier, the lead characters, the guys in the opening credits, they're barely involved. They show up to advance the plot. The end of Act 2, Paul Marino shows up out of nowhere just to deliver a plot twist in dialogue form. I would like to see if other episodes did the premise more justice, but our two journalists seem to have very little to do here. They're not in any jeopardy, unless you count the possibility that maybe things could have gone badly for Jack showing up unannounced to deliver Nichols' note to Jerry Lace. The responsibility for the impact that this episode does have is squarely on the shoulders of the guest stars. But fortunately, we've got some really good ones. It's not every day you get to see Robert Vaughn as a villain, but he's totally capable of doing it. Michael Constantine, baby Robert Culp, they hold up their end of the bargain very nicely. If this episode is in any way successful, it's really down to them. But as far as messaging, nope. Sorry, came up empty there.
Yeah, this one could be an interesting premise. Like you said, I would be curious to watch more episodes just to see, is this handled any better than what we've got here? But otherwise, this is a swing and a miss for me.
Yeah, same here. And it's kind of worrisome we're on week 2 of Swing and a Miss. APO 923 didn't land for us either, and this doesn't. I don't know if Gene had overbooked himself as far as scripts he had to deliver to various shows. That's possible. Unfortunately, this is one of those cases where we watch the thing, read the thing, and we just sit here scratching our heads a bit because it's not Star Trek. Of course, we're years before Star Trek, but better stuff than this has already happened.
I am really great at overbooking myself. Maybe he was. Maybe he had other stuff going on. I don't know. Whatever reason, this one is just, it's not on par with his other work that we have read and watched thus far.
Special thanks to the Roddenberry Repertory Players. Our cast this week featured Sean McDaniel as Jerome Lace and Brendan Byrne as Officer Canterbury. Or is that meager? Gene-ology is meant to be entertaining and informative, but it's also just the beginning of an ongoing conversation about the works of Gene Roddenberry. Drop us a line at missionlog@roddenberry.com and join us on Facebook at missionlogpod. And please remember, your comments could be used on future installments of Gene-ology. If you have any material that might be of interest to us that isn't already in the Roddenberry archive, drop us a line at missionlog@roddenberry.com. Our website is missionlogpodcast.com, and Mission Log Gene-ology is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment.
On the next Gene-ology, The Distant Thunder. Special thanks to consulting producers Matt Esposito, Tom Kozak, Mike Richards, Mike Schabel, and Paul Shadwell.
We'll be back next week with more of your favorite programs. This concludes our broadcast day.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.